Hey everyone, this is Will, and welcome to another brand new and exciting episode of The Missing Piece. It's hard to believe that we're fast approaching the end of 2025. And looking back, the entire year seemed to dance on two countries. One is China, and the other one is the US. Now, before we dive into something much deeper, I have to share with you that I've been thinking about the two countries, not only from the geopolitical perspective, but more importantly, from the economic standpoint. And we know that those two countries have been deadlocked in this technological competition and also trade relationships. Of course, that when we talk about this global economy, not only about China and US, and also about the entire world. Countries in Southeast Asia pay closer attention to what's happening right now. And also nations in Europe are actively engaging in dialogues about what's happening right now and regarding what will happen in the future. This year seemed to be a very busy year, and especially for the two leaders in the country, and traveled extensively across the world, meeting diplomats, the head of the nations, and also so many meaningful and engaging dialogues were brought on the table. But picture this. Take a step back. Let's not talk about the leaders. Let's talk about another crucial fabric of the society, the younger generations. Younger generations in China today are no longer the same as we picture 5 or 10 years ago. And the same thing about the younger generations or the millennials in the States. They're not looking at something that is beyond their imagination. They're paying closer attention to what's happening at this moment. And the question we want to ask, what is happening today to the world? And what is happening to the younger generations? What connect the people together? The answer is very simple. This is not something as a fantasy. This is not something as what we call idealism. For generations and the millennials in both China and the US, there are what we called applied awareness. The economic futures, the price of apartment, the stability of the jobs, and also the viability of the chosen path are now visibly, undeniably, wirely directly into the political arena. In China, the generation that also known as the millennials or these active groups are navigating a more complex landscape for this greater prosperity. And the US, the younger generations shaped by financial crisis, pandemic disruption, and tectonic cultural debates and view on politics through the lens of systematic pressure. In this episode, I am so fortunate to have one of my close friends who is American join the episode and share with me his personal experiences that travel around the world but end up living in China. As a matter of fact, not only he's surviving, but also he's thriving in many ways. From his American perspective, how do we understand the nation today? And what about the relationship between US and China, particularly regarding the younger generations? And more critically, the questions will be asked, it's about the future. How do we know that the current political instability in the US will be solved not only by this joint effort, but also by the global connection or the global collaboration? Again, I hope you enjoy the interview, and here's the show. Let's get started with a question. There's no denying today that when we talk about the younger generations, in China, particularly in the West, and there seems to be a new term, it's called generation flexibility, which means younger generations today in America are very much interested in promoting social and cultural, especially political movements. And we know that you have rich background in politics, and also you previously worked for political campaign. From your perspective, I want you to tell us a little bit about your background your interest, and why do you think today that more and more younger generations in America are also participating actively in the political or social movements?
Well, I think that first you need to sort of look at the evolution of technology in this sense. I would not necessarily say that youth today are more interested in political or social representation as, say, our parents or grandparents were. Rather, the technology for interacting with this mechanism is just far more personal. Social media has allowed, not just in the US, but also in China and globally, a way to massively interact and communicate with things that are happening socially. So I personally was kind of an early start. Social media for me, when I was 18, looked like Facebook. Facebook right now is a little archaic to some people, but it sort of started out with something being shared about something I saw on TV. Obama was up and coming. I was pretty big in that. And I think that when it comes to my interactions, I started getting this feedback loop of like-minded individuals who saying, hey, I noticed that too. I like healthcare too. I want a better wage. I want better this. I'm entering the workforce. I want all these things. And that access, that new technology, right now I think the new technology isn't just social media, it's maybe AI or something of that nature. But that technology and that interaction with other people who are like-minded, who are the similar age to me, well, that boosted and made a feedback loop of, I want to do more, I want to see more because my friends are seeing me, so I want my voice heard. It's nothing different than, say, back in our parents' day when their favorite band came out or their favorite music came out and they wear the shirt or they wear the paraphernalia. I think that's a very human thing. As far as Americans are concerned, it's always something political happening. And I'm trying to be as general as possible, not to incriminate me or people who I'm affiliated with. But in my experience, it is, I would say, imperative for youth of this generation to get active, but also be careful. Information can be spread, and not everyone. I was fortunate enough that when I went to university, we had communications courses on how to differentiate between a good source and a bad source. That means fact checking where the who funds this source, where do they lie on the political spectrum, why is this massively produced? Do they cite their sources? Do they self-correct if an error is happening? Those are some of the dangers that I worry about with current social interactions, but it's still all very fun, all very new. One could call this kind of the fourth industrial revolution, where we are getting away from discussing manufacturing and more so in the discussing information and how it's exchanged. I hope I...
Terry, I want to go back to your story. I know today when we look at cultural changes and look at politics or social movements, one word that comes to most of us, that is the word identity. This is so important. Again, going back to your personal story that you just mentioned that, I remember the Obama era, and you were passionate about healthcare, etc. So what were you looking for when you participated in campaigns or political voices and generations? And because I know that you are very much passionate. So again, let's dig a little bit deeper. Tell us that what motivated you to join, to participate, and also how about your specific jobs and specific areas that you focus on when you were part of the campaign? I know you mentioned last time specific states and specific candidates. Go ahead.
So I'll get more personal. So, as is obvious, I'm a Black American male. I'm 31 years old. But when I was getting really active, what was going on in my head was, for those who don't know, America has a long history of, Black American existence has not been the best. Not being a white male, not being a white straight male with money or means has not been the best existence in America. And for me, I was raised in a very strong tradition of Black pride, making sure that, we were representing our issues on labor, on discrimination within the policing, and economic equality. There was a huge wealth gap that's still there, as well as mass incarceration issues. A lot of these issues, to me, learning about them, going to college, were big, huge, number one issues. So the Obama administration and the Democratic Party in general, if you don't know how the American political system works, we have a right wing that is traditionally more business-oriented, more, I would describe it as more state right-centric, less socially minded, less regulation. And then you have a left wing, which tends to be more social justice oriented, labor focused. These are the traditional ones. Now, there are further critiques I could make about today's climate, but we'll leave that for now. As far as I am concerned, I was motivated on Black American metrics. How I got started was there was a local election happening in my state for our state senator. Luckily, she U.S. senator. Luckily, she won that year. She lost, unfortunately, in the second round ago. And Obama, just at that day, he was the president of hope. Everyone was kind of in it. It was just cool and popular to be with him. I still believed in today's. You look at today's opinions polls, and he's still very popular with age demographics of mine and above. He's a very popular president. Very good orator, and good on policy. People don't really look at that too. They always look at the voice who's good at that. But I never quit. I never quit the bug. As I got older, went through college, studied abroad, went to first to Chile. I saw politics leaning in a different direction. I was a huge Hillary Clinton fan. Unfortunately, Trump came into office, but from that defeat, I started getting more active, and I got into local Democratic organizations to promote voting, promote American participation, especially among youth group. Until I'm 35, technically, I'm a part of the young adults, even though I have some discrepancies with how young adults are saying stuff nowadays, but technically I am a young adult until 35. And I just kind of stayed active, and I stayed volunteering. I got connected with my local, certain local officials. I got active in certain primaries whenever I was in the States. I tried to, hey, if I want to be here for a month and there's an election going on, maybe I can knock on doors. If there's a politician I really like who's running, I can make phone calls. I can just be active and try to be a voice within my own friend group and my own social media sphere about issues I care for. And these issues, while I do have a thorough line of what I care about, these issues can alter and change based on what's going on. There was a time period when I was huge into Black Lives Matter, when that was happening in 2020, and even beforehand in my city, we had Black Lives Matter protesting way back in 2014. It wasn't just 2020, it happened even prior. A lot of these things can change. Now it is maybe about trade issues or tariff problems that are hurting American families and youth prospects for jobs and living in the U.S. It can be discrimination due to immigration that's happening in the U.S. I want to keep it very domestic. I don't want to talk about foreign policy issues here. But yeah, so that is sort of where I came into being. And I suggest to anyone who is interested in that, do your research. And by do your research, I don't mean listen to your friend who made a tweet, listen to your this and that. Like, yes, let that, if that's something that's interesting, it's good information. But if you are an American citizen, go and figure out who your local House representative is for the U.S. government. Figure out who your mayor is. Do you know who your mayor is? Do you know who your state representative is? That's sort of the research that I had to do. It's a quick Google search. You'll find it easy. Get in contact with them. See how active you can play. And if there's an issue you care about, show up. Sometimes you have to go to town halls. I had the luxury of being able to sit in on town hall calls in my local county, in my local city rep. There's all sorts of dimensions to how you can participate and make life better for you and the people you live with.
Jerry, if I can borrow a quote from one of the founding fathers, it's Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine once said, reputations are what men and women think of us, but characters are actually what God and angels know of us. So putting that in perspective, I know it's a bit cliche, but let's talk about, as you mentioned, I want to go into the word democracy. Back in the days, during the Obama era, or even the first term of Donald Trump, people used to do comparison and contrast when we think about democracy.
Yes.
But today, looking at the complication of the politics and looking at, again, we're seeing the approaches that Donald Trump is taking on right now. How do you think that we still value the image of democracy, particularly in America today? And why do you think that today people are less and less interested in trusting the government, but instead they're looking for something else? Your thoughts?
So, I mean, I think this is where my blackness comes out. I think that since I personally feel there are two values that we could look at, and I think that deep down, prior to the 1960s, American participation in democracy was essentially, I don't want to use apartheid state, but I want to say not all voters were enfranchised to participate within the system. For those who don't know, a little history lesson, in the mid-20th century, if you lived in certain states, you were not necessarily able to participate in, like, we had, America projects this image of democracy. But some of our more sanguine criticisms has been that up until the mid-60s, if you look like me and you live in the South, or you look, indigenous and you look some other places, and even Asian in some other places, you were deeply disenfranchised. But that all changed. And I think that ever since that change within the Democratic Party and within the mechanisms of our system of democracy, and we actually did become a more holistic and inclusive nation state, there has always been this pushback. And what we're experiencing now is a culmination of 50 to 60 years of disgruntling pushback. There's a growing, Obama signaled to the American people that there's a demographic shift that is happening within how many people and who is the majority in our country. And a lot of those people who are used to not necessarily a strata in which they benefit economically, but one in which they benefit culturally and socially. They're looking at it as like, I'm shrinking. And what I'm noticing so much as far as democracy is concerned is that those people are on the right. Those people are abandoning certain values in terms of like, hey, I like red, you like blue, but if 80% of people like blue and 20% like red and we all vote and blue wins, well, that's democracy. I don't get the win every time. Those people are saying, no, I do not feel comfortable with this representation. I will utilize tactics such as gerrymandering, such as unlawful seizures, such as installing Supreme Court, not allowing Obama to install a Supreme Court justice and then installing my own. Like, well, we can detail a lot of like the specifics of it, but nothing about how today we talk about democracy we didn't get here yesterday. It comes over years of development in what I personally view as racial resentment, demographic resentment. I think that is our democracy still intact in its current form? I hope so. I absolutely hope so. But every day it is like witnessing a quilt that is slowly undoing its tethers. You see the seams, you see the cracks. The best part about American democracy is that from its core, it is a decentralized system. And where the federal government and the states governments, it is not a top-down unitary system, it's a shared power system. So no matter how vicious the cycles can be, it is very difficult to concentrate and centralize power in the same way that other states might be able to. That said, it does not necessarily mean that we are by any means healthy compared to our, I would say, developed country contemporaries. When you look at what's going on with gerrymandering, comes from example. You have states like Texas and states like, I just saw a map from Indiana, the State House of Indiana voted for a gerrymandering. Gerrymandering, to your listeners, is a practice by which every census the U.S. needs to recalculate how its population is distributed so that when they get national representation in our legislative branch, which is our Congress, they are acquiesced holistically. Half of our states, or maybe a third, I'm not sure the numbers particularly, have unbiased state manager boards. So when they gerrymander and decide how many people live in a district, whether blue, red, or purple, they try to do it in a fair, independent way that doesn't privilege one side or the other. Other states do not have this system. And so when they gerrymander, they're like, I know these guys are going to vote this way, so I'm going to divide up their districts so much so that they don't get any representation. And this has huge impacts on domestic policy, foreign policy, and major issues. So you can have a mandate where 75% of the country wants a certain law or a certain improvement, but that 75% doesn't get represented because the districts that are supposed to represent them are cut in half. That is sort of where our fundamental democracy issues are happening. They're also happening in our judicial courts. We have a high tier court system, like if you don't know our system, three branch government. I know that something I always encounter when I talk to other people is that, like, oh, can't the president do this? They treat the president like a king. The president is not a king in the states. It does not have, and by king I mean the president does wield a lot of power, but that power is deeply, deeply restrained by our legislative caucus and by our judiciary caucus, Congress in this report. So the problem that we're having now with democracy is that we see more and more powers being given or concentrated to the executive office, and that really hurts our democratic system. The president is not supposed to be able to snap and do something like this unless it is wartime, international affair, cross-state caucus, unless it's like a hurricane or something. And we see in the U.S., we see bit by bit certain levers being destroyed that are supposed to be safety measures so he doesn't concentrate so much power. That's why you see no King's marches.
That's right.
You see all these different things. And, I encourage people to, if you aren't interested, you should read up on it. Use U.S. sources when you read up on it, just like you would if you were to read a paper about what is going on in Central Africa, try and read something that's written by actual Africans. They may have, or use some sourcing. It's just common practice.
Right now, we're sitting in a tea house in the capital city of China.
Yes.
Everything that you just shared with us regarding what's happening in the US, again, because the channels that we have today, so we're able to receive information and be exposed to those variety of informations online and also offline. I want to know what motivated you to move to China, and also how do you think that you being overseas can continue to contribute to the political movement or the influence in America, or even perhaps the people around you? Let's talk about that for a second.
First thing you know about me, I love Chinese food, or what Americans call Chinese food. So when I was younger, in St. Louis, we have a lot of local Chinese eateries, and I grew up loving to eat it. I also thought that the language looked really pretty. I looked at the characters and I thought, whenever I saw someone read it or look at it, I thought, wow, these ancient symbols, it was like magic. Now I'm less woo about it, but I still really appreciate this, and thought it was very interesting learning the system. So when I went to college, I went to Marquette U. I studied theater and Spanish. And my fourth year of college, I was given the opportunity to take a third language because most of my Spanish credits were up. My university at the time, that gave me a free block period, offered Arabic and Chinese. Now, if you know Spanish, Spanish uses gender in all of its grammatical tenses. So the table is a girl, the son is a boy, and I was just sick and tired of gender. I was sick and tired of, why does this have to be a girl? Why does this be a boy? Why do I got to change the endings? Why do I have to do conjugations? And then I go to Chinese, and Chinese is like, we don't even use the. We don't even use articles. We don't use this. We don't use that. But you do have to learn a little bit of tone, and you got to learn how to write everything. So I thought, wow, awesome system. I took the Chinese course. I loved it. I got an A+. We got extra credit for hanging out with some of the Chinese exchange students who came there. By the way, very new money. A lot of Chinese university students come over to America. We literally run on the backs of the money that we get from outside students. But I learned a lot. And they introduced me. That's when I learned about WeChat. That's when I learned about some of the, back then, when I was in school, the reputation of China for Americans at that time wasn't necessarily adversarial in the same degree. It was more like this new up and coming, new cities, new money, companies growing, things were open. Back then when I went to school, you could still use Google and you could still use all these other things. That changed very quickly when I got here. But it was considered like, go over there, make some money, have some fun. And I took the class and I told myself, I'm going to go to China. I'm going to go to China. I'm going to work on some Spanish first. I went to Chile first to make sure, get my language in my second language a little easier. I went to teach English there for about 5 months. And then I went on this website called findajobinchina.org. They connected me with a recruiter. My degree was in theater, and there was like this theater teaching company looking for English language. And then next thing you know, a year after I graduated, August 2017, I got on a flight, I landed in Beijing, and that was that. I just worked here on and off. Actually got my master's at Tsinghua. I left for COVID for 3 years and came back. So I had very good experience, very great experience. So that's sort of why I came to China. Now, To your second question,
Your presence in China.
yeah.
How does your presence in China continue to contribute to the political movements or the political voices in America? So in other words, how do you make the effort continue to generate conversations or participate or even try to let more people realize what's happening in the US? And again, I mentioned before, why is it crucial for them to participate as well?
So I think it is super important because what my experience in China, my existence here is that I'm trying to tell people in the US that you are not merely a citizen of your state. You're not merely a citizen of the country, but your decisions have worldwide implications. There's no better place that knows this than me living in China. So when, and I'll keep less political stuff out of the way, but I think this one's fine to talk about. When our national government puts in a leader and they have an economic policy towards soybeans or towards certain agricultural products, that decision impacts markets and futures over here, overseas. It impacts markets in Europe, in Latin America, in African producer countries. When certain, it's sort of, my existence here, I'm trying to promote Americans to have a holistic response of like, hey, when I vote in this leader who puts in this policy, they may or may not have a agenda item that could decide whether or not a factory is built in my city, that whether a green energy plant that is necessary for my community to thrive, and we could go from poverty to middle class to rich. This foreign investor could come over here and help us out. I haven't just lived in China. I've also lived, I've studied in Switzerland, I've studied in Chile, I've studied in Spain. So I have, most of my time has been in China, but I do say that I've been on three different continents. So I've experienced how global encompassing the US market and US politics can have. And we're all in this together. At the end of the day, aside from nations, aside from this, we're all people. We're all human beings. But as far as the US is concerned, I want to use my experience here to bring back to the US to tell people that your decisions matter. They don't just, life does not end, life does not start and begin from what is in your peer view. Everything is connected. To be more specific, I have a social media platform, 23,000 followers, not that big. But within my local little pool, I make a lot of graphics. I always see myself as a guest. I always remember I'm a guest in my host country, whether that is China, whether that is in Europe, or whether that is this. This isn't about censorship. It's about I don't like to be pushed forward on things like that. But I use things that I observe and how systems work in the countries I'm in, and I can give a little compare and contrast. Just the other day, I was talking to a friend about how unions in America work and how they, what the right to strike is, what collective bargaining means for U.S. markets, and how that is reflected in a more state-centralized system like in China. How that might look in Europe. When I was in Switzerland, how that might look in Latin America. It's very, very different. And there's a lot of ignorance on the US side of people see wealth and they equate that. I'm big into labor. people see wealth and they equate that to, well, they must be doing good if everything looks pretty and nice. But then when I tell them, hey, in Europe, you get a little more if you do this. You have less work hours. But if you come over to an Asian market, Japan, China, South Korea, you may be working 45, 50 hours. If you go in the States, sometimes you get, China has great maternity leave, while the States doesn't have a nationalized maternity guarantee. China has no technically legal right to strike, even though sometimes it does happen. It's kind of put under thing. America, depending on your industry and your state, you may see that more often. So there's a lot to compare and contrast. And there's a lot to, living in China has made me both appreciate being an American more, but also really, really defend what we have from going downhill. Because what you see now, especially under Republican governance, is a lot of things that I'm like, hold on a minute, I don't want that, because I appreciate it even more having been to so many different countries, having lived in China. And then there are other things where I'm like, hey, I think they do it a little better here. Maybe we can implement this in this sort of way.
Terry, we see political polarization is happening in America, and which is rather devastating. And you and I, we had numerous conversations about something that you and I, we both, I want to say, more to you, that passionate about, it's Democrats abroad. And this is something crucial. I know that it's a core to your heart. This is the last month of 2025.
Oh, years.
I know it's sad.
It's been a long year.
Looking forward, 2026, midterm election is coming up. And it's another significant milestone for both Republicans and the Democrats. So from your perspective, I really want you to talk a little bit more. How do you think that Democrats abroad are able to, again, generate noises or support, if I dare to use that word, when it comes to midterm election, or when it comes to continue to push the political agenda? Because we know that Donald Trump is not going to stop at 2028. I mean, he's thinking about something way beyond that, right? So, and even beyond. So from your perspective, how significant is the Democrats abroad? And how do you think that you are being part of the DA and able to, or collectively, help or contribute to the midterm election?
So Democrats Abroad, for those who do not know, is a organization based. Technically, it's a subsidiary of the Democratic National Committee. It's vital. A lot more than millions of Americans do not live in the U.S. Millions of Americans are like me and you, who are live abroad either through work or through military service or what have you. And what Democrats Abroad does is it is a vehicle for people to figure out how to vote back home. We give people information on, your state has this rule, your state has that rule. This is how you can cure your votes. And we also meet up for, American things, holidays, what have you. And it is super vital because the vote matters. You don't get your voice heard. You don't make change unless you're voting. There's a lot of, you talked about youth disgruntlement and apathy. And I always tell people they wouldn't be trying so hard to restrict voting laws if your vote didn't matter. So please, 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 if you are an American citizen and you are living abroad, go to democratsabroad.org, figure out your country and go there. So let's go into into detail about midterms.
Yes.
I am quite optimistic. I'm very optimistic about our prospects in 2026, and I'll tell you why. This year, Democrats have decimated Republican seats in pretty much every special election. We're overperforming. Your friend recently mentioned Mamdani. Ironically, Mamdani, if you do not know, is a New York City mayor. He is some people's favorite. He ran a very good campaign. That's all I'm going to say about him. But he, as well as many other Democrats in New Jersey, Virginia, South Carolina, Colorado, we are winning elections by margins that, if you're around during 2018, when we swept the House under the first Trump administration,
Right.
that it's looking like that. It's looking like a bloodbath, and the bloodbath is blue. Now, here is the problem. The problem is there is still a consistent effort and push by Republican-controlled state governments to gerrymander these districts to a point where Democrats have to perform ungodly well to flip House districts and seats. If we still had, this is not to segue away, during the Obama era, the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act, which essentially allowed state governments with a history of intense racial gerrymandering to get away with weakening the power of large minority groups. These tend to be Black Americans, Asian Americans, Latino Americans. These tend to be strongholds within the Democratic Party. And we want representation too. And what that law did was essentially create a decade after these super gerrymandered districts that in a year, if 2008, if we ran the election, Democrats would be killing it, at all times, be having super big majorities in the House. That's not necessarily the case anymore. That said, Trump's popularity is super unpopular. One of the most unpopular presidents in 40 years, I believe. They just did a statistic. I read an article yesterday about it, by simply how unpopular it is. A lot of this is due to the economic issues. A lot of it is due to his, as much as people said they wanted harsh immigration policy, I think it's quite laughable that they didn't expect he really meant that. And he went into a lot of these brown people's homes. Hey, uncle. Hey, sister, and started putting them on planes and shipping them out. And not to their countries of origin, sometimes to very poor authoritarian states that say, hey, give me some money, I'll lock them up for you. So he's very unpopular. So how do I feel about 2026? I feel that it is almost certain we're going to win the House. I do not know if we are going to get a Senate victory. But as far as organizations like DA are concerned, our job remains the same. Our job is to reach out to American expats, military, or what have you, college students who live abroad, say, you have a voice, you can make a difference, and to get them to vote, and to get their friends to vote, and to get their families to vote, and to get everyone to vote. One of my proudest sentiments of patriotism is that I live in a nation that says, whether you are here or the moon, you should participate in the democracy of your birthplace. You have a say. And I think DA represents us pretty well. I'm no longer on the DA board. I stepped down. I just still participate in a lot of events and I try to keep active. I'm not on the board anymore, so I used to be vice chair and what have you. Again,
Terry, I have two more questions. Let's move on to the next part. Again, we talk about political polarization and we talk about midterm election. Look beyond 2025 and tap into 2026. according to the social media post, the sitting US President Donald Trump, it's more likely, if that happens, to visit China next year. Again, the two leaders just sat down this year during the APEC summit. And again, we saw the images and we saw the meetings and the conversations, and according to the social media post. Let's be more specific. From your perspective, do you think, or how much do you think, that Trump's visit to China next year, if that were to happen, could actually build credibility to his presidency? And how do you think that overall that could really reshape the relationship between the two countries? Your thoughts?
I think that you have to. China is a global and regional power. I think that to the American audience, China's relationship and how the domestic audience views China, it's still quite foreign. It's foreign in the sense of socialization, not in the sense of economics. We are very much intertangled, economically speaking. But to, let's say, Trump's base is not fond of China. The American left, well, it depends on who you ask. The majority of the American left is still quite critical of certain Chinese actions on the foreign scale. We don't have to get into details on that. There is an aspect of the American left that is enthralled with China, that would see Trump traveling to China as like, oh, that's great. They are not by any means representational of the base of the average American voter. As far as Chinese Americans are concerned, they're about maybe, 3%, 4% of the population. I wouldn't say, because most of the Chinese population came before the come. So if the question is, does Trump meeting with China make any significant changes in support for the Trump administration? I would say lukewarm, neutral. It doesn't matter much. What would make Trump look good is to his audience is solving domestic economic concerns. So, and what does that mean? Now, that could mean coming to China and shaking some hands, schmoozing over deals, cutting down some tariffs. That's not going to happen in the span of, he needs to change all of that by November of 2026. None of those economic realities will happen anywhere close if he comes in you said in a couple of months, I believe. Right. That's not feasible. Just as anybody who knows economies know that the times for inflation and deflation and those pressures, it's too short of a timeline. The American consciousness is quick. What is my reality now? Unlike something I will praise China on this, China sort of has a think in decades, not years sort of mentality. So you're planning things 100 years ahead. The American electorate changes like that. We just voted in Biden and then we just kicked him out. It can change on ahead. So does Trump visiting China matter much to Americans? It may matter. I think that maybe it matters in the eyes of Chinese nationals in terms of like, you're meeting a powerful country, this ups the legitimacy of my leader and the party and whatnot. I think that matters here. But as far as Americans are concerned, it's just another trip to another country what will come out of it? Will he give more Americans are more concerned about he was just locked in scandals with Qatar and Middle Eastern countries of accepting bribes and gifts. We're more concerned, we're more suspicious. I think suspicion is a much better tactic. Much better word. It's more suspicious. Our relations, however intertangled economically, there are still some glaring differences with how we interpret what is good governance and what is good diplomatic relations. And I'll leave, and I'm going to spare the details because I don't want to be. I will spare the details of that. But you know, the average American looks at Trump and is like, "Please, dear God, don't mess it up. Don't spit on." You know, don't come over here and spit on someone in China. Don't mock him. Don't say anything. We're much more worried about embarrassment. The people who are in his corner, like those really hardcore MAGA people who have no idea how people, like I tell people back home, like, you know, I've never met, all my Chinese coworkers think Americans are crazy for putting him into the first place. Maybe the first term, there were some who were like, oh, he's a businessman. They like that. But now, especially with everything that's happening and all these tariffs, most of my friends who are Chinese are like, oh my gosh, you idiots, what are you doing? But we may not like America in general, but at least give us somebody who we can, you know, makes more sense. Right. But no, I don't think Americans are. I don't think that's going to sway anybody.
Terry, I want to ask the last question. Again, let's forward thinking is 2026.
Yes.
We have talked about plethora of topics from your journey, the beginning to China, and your social media platforms, and also the previous role in DA and etc. until the administrations. I want to know in 2026, how do you see yourself continue to motivate people around you, especially other American colleagues or American friends within Beijing or in China? What are some of the ways, some of the ideas for you to continue collectively to join, to participate in the American political movement? And also from your personal perspective, what are some of the ways for you to make the voices louder? Again, it's not just about the midterm election. It's not about 2028, but your personal influence, your personal goals, and your strategies continue down the road for the political agenda.
So currently, my lovely and beautiful host country has very different laws on expression. So I'm kind of muted. I self-mute in certain ways. But as far as my Western social media is concerned, I continue using my voice, using graphics, speaking to individuals, helping to organize events if need within DA, if I'm able. In 2026, I actually, knock on wood, I applied to a job back in the States that's of the political nature. I don't know if I got it or not, but hopefully we'll see. So I tell people, stop sitting around and waiting for and only reacting when a Trump happens. Why we got in this mess is because we thought in 2008, Obama got in, Obama's great, we love him, celebrity, blah, 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 blah. We got in and people didn't show up after. They didn't do the work after. They said they didn't show up for midterms. They didn't show up. They showed up for his presidential second term, but they didn't show up for the midterms afterwards. And then bing, bang, boom, you got Trump. My job in 2026, and not just 26, but every year, is to say, don't let other people make decisions for you. You make your decisions, and you do them early, and you do them now, and you do them often. Whether that is me working officially in a campaign capacity, in the office of someone, through DA, or even on social media. I was protesting in Black Lives Matter, so I was on the streets with air horn and everything. I will take my steps to do whatever I can as an individual. It is your responsibility to take charge of your own life.